Are you looking for a homeschool curriculum that's flexible, engaging, and approved for Step Up for students? Let me tell you about Discover by Bridgeway Academy. It's more than just a curriculum, it's really a journey. Discover is designed for students in grades 1 through 8, and it blends colorful hands-on lessons with the flexibility homeschool families need. Whether it's language arts, math, science, or social studies, each subject is built to meet academic standards and, most importantly, spark curiosity. And it's all designed to fit your unique schedule. With built-in lesson plans, progress tracking, and online support, Discover takes the guesswork out of homeschooling. So whether you're brand new or a seasoned pro, you'll feel confident from day one. Now, if you're not using state funding, you can get 20% off with promo code DISFPEA20E at checkout. Visit discoverk8learning.com. That's discover K, the number 8, learning.com. Again, that's discoverk8learning.com to learn more and save today.
So the animal welfare and the environmental stewardship were the first two things that caused me to make the change. 10 or 15 years in, the town and the impact that it was having on the town became important to me.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I am speaking with Will Harris of White Oak Pastures. Will has such an interesting story to share about honoring legacy in the midst of also seeing a need for change. His story is one of tenacity, determination, and a heart to truly make things better for his farm, his family, and his community. I'm sure that his story will inspire you as much as it has me. Listen with me now.
I had a great child. I was raised way out in the country, and my dad had employees that lived on the farm, and they had a lot of children, so we were sort of like a gang. I was an only child, and I was raised without many rules. The main rule I remember is be back in at dark. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there weren't many rules. I led a pretty feral existence. We hunted and fished and played in the woods, and I had a great childhood, and I'm very grateful for it.
And you were living on a farm that had already been around for a number of years. What year was your farm founded?
My great-grandfather founded our farm in 1866. My children today are the fifth generation to work the farm. And they've got a bunch of babies, so there may be a sixth generation.
So there may be another one. That's fantastic. I know part of your story that I got to tap into a lot was your description of what your small town was like, too, as a child. Can you tell us a little bit about your town?
I can. I am sitting in the courthouse, the old courthouse in the middle of Bluffton, Georgia. And Bluffton, Georgia sits in the middle of my farm. Bluffton has a purely agrarian economy. We never had a mill or a plant or a factory. It was all farm, agricultural. And the town, I realize now, really went into decline after World War II. Mm-hmm. I was born in 1954. And by the time I was a kid, the town was in decline, but it was still a little town. There were still kids here. You could get up a football game any Saturday afternoon, enough kids to do it, offense and defense. At some level, I've known the town was in decline all my life and was not particularly concerned about it. I didn't know of anything I could do about it. And I guess if something has always been in decline, you just assume that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I I'm very proud of what our farm has done for the town. We're the largest private employer in the county. We've got about 170 employees. My payroll is over $100,000 every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And my employees all live in and around Bluffton. So it's a real economic driver. And the town is no longer in decline. We've got a store. When I started making the changes, the only thing you could buy in Bluffton was a stamp. And the post office was open about 3 hours a day. And today we've got a store, a restaurant, and lodging, and a lot of stuff here in town that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts of your story, honestly, to me, is how much everything that you built was outside of yourself as well. It wasn't just within your own farm or family. But well, let's go back a little bit to, again, your childhood. I know you were growing up on the farm, and part of the story is when your farm switched hands, I think, with your dad in the 1950s. He started making some changes at that point.
My dad was born in 1920. He took over the farm after World War II in 1946.
Mm-hmm.
And he really changed the farm, and I'm glad he did. It was economically necessary that it be changed. My great-grandfather and grandfather ran the farm as a local food provider. They and their employees raised several species of livestock. And every day, before day, 6 days a week, they got up and the employees and killed something. It might have been a cow, it might have been a couple of hogs, it might have been 100 chickens, but they killed something.
Mm-hmm.
And loaded in a mule-drawn wagon and brought it 2 miles up the road to Bluffton and distributed it. And so they had two or three stores and a boarding house and a hotel and some of the more affluent citizens, and they sold that day's slaughter to those people. And this is pre-refrigeration, pre-USDA inspection, pre-internal combustion engine trucks. It was sell it or smell it.
Yeah.
And they did. And that's the way they operated the farm. Dad, after World War II, took it over. And under his watch, it became a monocultural cattle operation. And it was no longer vertically integrated. He didn't slaughter anything. He raised calves to be shipped to the West to be fattened. And it was timely. That was what needed to happen. And he was successful and was profitable. He made money and grew the farm. It was the right thing to do. And, I was raised working for my dad in that monocultural cattle operation, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all I ever wanted to do. My dad actually did not want me to come back and run the farm, but I never wanted to do anything else, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the University of Georgia. I majored in animal science. I graduated and came home and ran the farm, an industrial monocultural cattle operation, just like my dad had for 20 years.
And if I'm not mistaken, I can't recall all of the things, but as you did take over the farm and were running your farm, it was a highly successful operation, and you were recognized and a leader in your associations and other areas where the men came together who raised cattle, correct?
It was profitable for us. We made money every year. I literally went back and looked, and I paid taxes every year on profits.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean we made a lot of money. It was not like that. But the business was a profitable business, and I did not make the change because I was not financially doing okay. I made the change for far more personal reasons.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things that is most inspiring to me about your story is, when you're telling your story and you get to the point where you're watching a truck pull away with the cattle and it occurs to you and it hits you that this isn't the way we should be doing this. And you decide to make a change.
That's exactly what happened. And there was a lot of naivety in my decision to make the change. I did not realize how hard it would be, how expensive it would be, how risky it would be. But and probably a good thing. I might not have done it had I understood all
I
that.
was going to say, if we knew all the risks, right? But I think that that's a really inspiring thing too, because you were not 20 something when you made that decision, and you weren't starting a brand new, business or enterprise. This was a farm that was providing and profitable. Like you said, it had been successful, but you felt like it was the right thing to do. Can you explain to me a little bit about your reasons, the personal reasons that you had for wanting to make the changes?
When I came back to the farm from college, I loved it. I loved everything about it, and I saw no problem with it, and I was very close to it. Raised here all my life, but for whatever reasons, fairly abruptly, in 20 years in, I would have been 40 in my early 40s. The animal welfare that I thought was great suddenly seemed to me, or fairly quickly seemed to me, was not great. And the environmental impact of what I did, which I thought was above reproach, I felt like was not above reproach. It was not okay. So the animal welfare and the environmental stewardship were the first two things that caused me to make the change. 10 or 15 years in, the town and the impact that it was having on the town became important to me. So those are the three things that are important to me today: animal welfare, regenerative land management, and rebuilding this little local economy.
I think that it was interesting because as I was reading, I am not a farmer and I didn't grow up in that culture or environment at all. But one of the things that was interesting is when I was reading your story and not even thinking about the things that were impacted in the ecosystem. And you talk about when you were a little boy running around and seeing certain things, and, there were being frogs and toads everywhere and all of that. And can you explain to us a little bit those changes that came about with the monoculture farming and what has happened with the ecosystem now?
Well, when American agriculture decided that monocultural production was the right thing to do, my dad's generation, and of course I embraced it as well, what that meant is we were in the killing business. I went to my pastures every day, and I wanted nothing living out there except Tifton 85, Bermuda grass, and cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were living in my pasture and you weren't Tifton 85, Bermuda grass, or a cow, I wanted you dead, and I knew how to kill you. I think I was very good at using pesticides. Side means kill. Homicide is to kill people. Pesticide is to kill pests.
Right.
Insecticide, insects, nematicide, nematodes, herbicides, plants. It's all about killing. And, I didn't just think it was okay. I took a lot of pride in my ability to do that. I thought I was good at it, and I was proud I was good at it. But I realized fairly, as I said, fairly suddenly that really that was wrong, that my farm was an ecosystem, and ecosystems are supposed to operate and create an abundance.
Right.
A properly operating ecosystem has many cycles: the water cycle from the rain, energy cycle from the sun, mineral cycle from stones, from soil, on and on. Many cycles we probably don't even realize. And when those cycles are operating optimally, it creates an abundance. All that coal and oil and gas we've been living on for the last 100 years is the abundance of nature from the era of the dinosaur. All the systems of nature were operating optimally, and it was spinning off an abundance.
Right.
And we decided that, we wanted to have a monoculture, which flies in the face of nature. Nature doesn't want that. But that's what we decided to do, and we got really good at it. And I've been moving away from that for 25 years.
I know, too, it was interesting to me how you talked about when you started looking to turn back to the regenerative farming, and you had to start thinking about like processing the cattle and the meat and everything, that the places that had existed around you before were no longer there to do that. Now, this is a part of rebuilding your community and that side of the story. But so the monoculture farming really got rid of not just the ecosystems that we depend on, but also those businesses that were working in a community like that, an agricultural community, to process meat, store meat, and do those things, right?
You're exactly right. The industrialization, commoditization, centralization that my dad's generation and my generation kind of perfected was really hard on the land. It was really hard on the animals. It was really hard on the community. You mentioned the little abattoirs or the local slaughter plants that almost every little town had. Did not have a market anymore because the beef business was centralized. We raised calves out here in 50 states and shipped them to the Midwest, then further west now, for finishing and slaughter. And then all of the food businesses centralized. And when they centralized, it sucked the money out of the local economies. I think I read recently that the farmer gets 14 cents of the food dollar. Well, if I raise it here on this farm and slaughter it in my processing plants and sell it locally, I get 100 cents of the food dollar. That would make it seem as though I'm making a lot of money. We're not. It's profitable, but it's not a high return on investment. But I mentioned 170 employees, and my payroll is over $100,000 a week. That has brought life back to Bluffton, Georgia. And that's a highly replicatable model. That can be done again and again and again all across this country. My production model is not highly scalable. We're probably as big as we need to be in terms of volume. But it is highly replicatable. People could do this in, all 50 states.
Right. And I think that, again, that's part of the story that makes it very inspirational. Now, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, you may not have done the work if you had known what the work was going to be, because it wasn't necessarily all easy. And I like to think and just kind of go through the process of your work to get even to where you are today with selling your meat and everything. So once you made the decision to run your farm the way you did, and then you had to find somewhere to have the meat slaughtered and processed and do all of that part of the work. Part of the story that was interesting to me was how you had to go from there to getting it into the grocery stores. And I know we're here in Florida and in the Southeast. Publix is well known. And just your part of the story about getting into Publix, can you share a little bit about how you managed to get into the market as an individual who was working to bring back regenerative farming?
Well, I'll say that I was incredibly fortunate, just incredibly lucky. When I first started transitioning my farm from the industrial model to what it is today, I had some bad years. I went from making money every year to losing money for a few years. And it was frightening because I didn't see an end in sight. I didn't see how it was going to become profitable. And it may not have, except I was just incredibly lucky that I started when I did. By the time I got to this point, it was the early 2000s, and there were a lot of people talking about grass-fed beef, but there wasn't much grass-fed beef out there. And I had a lot of it. And I was able to sell Publix is the first customer I had of any consequence. And I was able to sell Publix the first pound of American grass-fed beef that they marketed as American grass-fed beef. And it was very timely, and they expanded it. I later sold Whole Foods Market and Kroger and some others. And it was, again, I'd like to tell you I was just so brilliant. I saw all that coming. That is not what happened. It purely was a matter of luck, and I'm very, very grateful for that bit of fortune.
Well, and they made you jump all the hoops and do all of the work. I know it took you a while to get everything right for it to go into the store. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you were the one going back and forth sampling and taste testing with people in the stores and doing all of that work, all that groundwork to get that done.
When I first started, sold product to Publix, part of the deal was I go to each store and get them started with it. And sometimes that involved just educating the personnel in the store, meet people, M-E-A-T, meet people, not meet people. Sometimes they would want me to do demos, and they would provide the cook, thank goodness, because I didn't know I was much of a cook. But my job was to talk to the people and tell them why the meat was different, what we do differently. And that was not something I can't say I particularly enjoyed it, but it was very good for me. I didn't know those customers. I was raised in Bluffton, Georgia, very rural, and I didn't know those Publix shoppers, but it caused me to meet them and find out what was important to them. And there was a lot of similarities between what they thought was good and right and what I thought was good and right. And it was, again, I was very, very fortunate to have that experience. While I may not have enjoyed it, it was very good for me.
It was good. Yeah, I think that it was really interesting to me to put together in that timeline, in my mind, just, like you said, there were a lot more people talking about grass-fed meat, farm to table restaurants were coming into play in the area that we live in a lot more. So people were more aware. And I think that the education that led to some of that awareness was a helpful thing for you as well. But you didn't stop with providing those resources to families in the store. I know in your book it talks a little bit about how the online market really helped your farm, and that was probably 2020 COVID year kind of impact, like we saw with a lot of people and having to purchase online.
In 2015, the federal government changed the rule on country of origin labeling. And previously, product of the USA, with reference to beef, meant born, slaughtered, processed in one of the 50 states. And that was the way I built my business. In 2015, lobbyists for big meat companies caused the government to change that rule. And product of the USA now means some value is added in this country. The animal was likely born, raised, slaughtered in Uruguay, Australia, New Zealand, South America, somewhere. And the meat brought here. But it can be called product of the USA because value is added. It was cut or sliced or ground when it got to the American soil. And that really adversely affected my profits in grocery because they could suddenly buy that imported product so cheap. And they did. And I kept some business, but I had to cut my price and lost my profitability again. By that time, my daughter had come home from college. She graduated from college, come home, and she started our online store. And it was not successful. We spent whatever we had to spend, $1 million or something, putting it in. And we'd sell $1 million worth of product a year and lose money selling it, which was not a good deal. But when the pandemic struck and the grocery stores ran out of food, our online business really caught fire. It really torqued up. And it was profitable for us. And today we actually sell more product online shipped by FedEx and UPS than we sell through grocery stores.
That's incredible. And I think it's, just such a testament to what people found when they were forced to go other places, and appreciating the value of it. I mean, I will be, just honest. For me, once I tasted meat that was grown on a farm where I knew it was coming from, where it had been fed and what it had been fed, and knew that it had been processed here, the taste of the meat was so incredibly different to me that it's hard to ever go back to something else. There's all the reasons, but just the taste factor is incredible, and I think that is part of it. But I think too, once you put yourself into the place where you make those sacrifices in your budget to have food that's of higher quality, that it's easier to stay there than not. So, educating people, all of that I think is huge. But once people experience that difference, it's hard to ever turn around and go back, I believe. And so I know that your online business grew. You had a lot of growth in the community because of the processing that you built in the community and everything else. And I do want to talk a little bit about your community because, like I said, I've been there and visited after I read your book because I was so drawn to experience that part of the story myself. And you have a great store there and restaurant, some of the best tacos I've ever eaten I had at the restaurant. But tell me a little bit about how that, because the store and, like you said, your office, you've revitalized buildings that were there. You've not torn things down and built modern. You've really revitalized your community.
We bought just about every, not quite, but just about every store or house or lot that's sold in Bluffton for the last 15 to 20 years, and we certainly don't own all of them. We own a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And we didn't pay much for it. There wasn't much competition for it. But when we buy something, we really do try hard to fix it up and make it nice. We cleaned up a lot up the street here that I just bought a week or so ago, and it was a jungle, and we were cleaning it up, and it looks really good. I'm very proud of it. Mm-hmm. But that's what we do, and we will continue to do it. And we got some further plans for Bluffton. I don't know when we will get them done. These things take money, and our business is profitable, but it's not profitable enough to make sweeping change. So we just have to see how it goes. But it is I don't think we got into it, but I have 3 daughters. 2 have been there in their 30s. 2 of them have come back to the farm to work in the business, and their spouses. Yeah. So I feel like we've got another, and they got a bunch of babies on the ground, but we've got another 30 years or so of working here, so we don't have to be in a rush. I really do believe we can make things better and better. Our goal is not to make the business bigger and bigger. It's to make it better and better.
And I can appreciate that. I think that that's part of the inspiration there. I think in a society today where so much of what we do and see and hear and learn is a click of a button or fast little clips on a screen that we watch. And to actually see someone who has been able to walk through years of growth and improvement and change and have the tenacity to do it even through difficult times. I'm sure there were probably times people who were weighing in were asking you what you were thinking with all of this, that there were those moments where there had to be that question and then the resolve to move forward. It's inspiring to see, because if you can do what you have done in your personal farm and in your town and in your business, then all of us have the ability to do that and make those changes and reclaim what was good that would be lost if we didn't take the time to do it. So it's very inspiring.
You're very right. I mean, I tell people that what we have done in Bluffton is not highly scalable, but it's highly replicatable. I mean, Bluffton Bluffton is still a tiny little village, 100 and something people, but it's nice. And
Yeah.
my goal wasn't to go to 500, 1,000, and 5,000 people. That was not my goal. My goal was to make it nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice. I'm proud of it. Hope you come see it. Well, you said you've been.
I did. I actually am coming back in the fall, so I'm looking forward to being back. But
I hope your listeners will come see us.
Yeah, I would encourage it. And part of what you have there too is an opportunity. Like I said, again, you're not just doing and profiting. You have opportunities for people to come and stay, and workshops and classes for them to be educated themselves on how to do what they can do in their homes and their gardens and on their farms. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What was the inspiration for that? Just using.
Yes, so we started a nonprofit, a 501c3, for the purpose of training people to do what we have done.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say inundated, but it's kind of inundated. There's a lot of people that would come here and want to learn what we do, how we do it, and we're happy to share that with them. But it's really cumbersome if you don't have some sort of structure
Right.
to handle it. So I formed a nonprofit, and the nonprofit is called CFAR. That's the acronym. That's Center for Agricultural Resilience.
Mm.
We hired a really sharp, young executive director. He does a great job. We put on schools, and it's on our website. You can see the schedule.
Right.
To teach the things that we do here. In addition, we have an internship program. We bring in 6 interns 4 times a year for 3 months, and they get the full meal deal. They get cows, hogs, sheep, goats. They work a week or so in each one of our enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, you're not going to learn how to farm in 3 months,
right,
but you will learn how you want to move forward with your education. And we hire a lot of those people. We take 6 per quarter, 4 times a year. We'll hire 2 or 3 out of each class to stay on as employees. But it's become a great recruiting tool for White Oak Pastures.
That's fantastic. But it also is sending people out there with those models and those reasons and motivations in mind wherever they go, and I think that that's incredible because it does help spread the message and the model of what you've done, and continues to grow that desire in people to do the same, right? Also, I was really interested, and I don't want to try to say too much because I don't know that I would serve it well, but I know that there were other areas that were being purchased near your community for solar farms. And you had some really inspired thoughts and innovative ideas about what to do with that. And I would love for you to share that a little bit because it was very interesting to me.
So we now graze 3 large solar farms that are within about a 6-8 mile radius of my farm where I'm sitting right now. And I think they're a little less than 1,000 acres apiece, the 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And the first one and they're not. I don't own them. They're owned by a company called Silicon Ranch Corporation. Its headquarters is in Nashville. The first one they put in, they bought the farm, the land from a friend of mine, and so I knew about it early on, and I really was unhappy about it because I'd seen those solar farms up and down the highway. I've seen them spraying Roundup and mowing and just a really unnatural ecosystem. So I got the CEO to come down here to visit with me and pitch them on letting me have the contract to maintain the vegetation using my sheep. We got about 3,000 head of sheep. Mm-hmm. And he ultimately bought into it and liked it. And then has now expanded it to other areas. I got these 3 farms here. I don't want any more.
Right.
But he's finding other producers across the country to do the same thing we're doing here. And it's a symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship. It's good for White Oak Pastures, and it's good for Silicon Ranch Corporation, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for the community.
Right.
And there's just a lot to be said. We employ more. When those large solar installations come to these rural little towns, people get mad at them because they kicked the farmer off that was farming the land. And I get that. I understand it. But here, the farmer didn't get kicked off. A different farmer came in doing different things. Instead of planting corn, cotton, and peanuts, we raise sheep. But we don't spray chemicals, and they pay more taxes. And also, we hire more people to graze these arrays than the farmers hired when they were farming them agronomically with big 12-row equipment.
Right,
so
right.
They may not be pretty to look at, and not much I can do about that. But past that, I don't see where it's done anything except improve this little rural community.
I thought that was, again, just a really innovative way of addressing those, problems that were going to come in and have some runoff and cause issues for your system, but instead of getting upset about it and just getting upset, you let that concern move you to an innovative way of fixing the problem. And it's an inspiration to see other people now doing that in other places. Again, I think just on so many levels, it's an inspiration to me to see the way that you've addressed the things that, have been posed in your journey that were hard or difficult to overcome. And I think that it's a great testament to what your family started in 1866, that you have been able to be innovative and, thoughtful in bringing the farm and the community back to something that's really beautiful. And, to see it again, I grew up in small town America, so I really can appreciate the small town and those communities. And it is hard to see them go through periods of decline and see those small main streets dead and no businesses and nothing. So just to go into Bluffton and see that is still now a functioning, like you said, not a huge community, but it's a functioning, beautiful community and a testament to the work that, you've been able to bring there and in a very thoughtful way. And I think that that's part of what's so inspiring to me is it wasn't just about you and your family. It was about the community ultimately. And you've done a lot of good work there. A lot of good work.
Just today, I just came from out there seeing about it. They delivered a building, a little prefabricated building that we bought to start a homeschool here. We've hired a teacher, and she's teaching one or two of my grandchildren this year. And we're going to open it up slowly, more and more, as years go by. So we're excited about having. Bluffton used to have 2 schools.
Right.
Now we have no school. But as of today, we got 1 school. So,
see, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. And I think the educational part of what you're doing too, again, is it isn't going to end with you. It's a legacy that you've developed and built and, will last for many years after you. And isn't that what's important for all of us, to leave a legacy that will have an impact far beyond our years? So I thank you for joining me today. This has been a really fun conversation for me to have, like I said, because I've been so inspired by your story. But I want to ask you this question. If somebody is venturing into maybe a new journey, something that's a little scary for them, to a new enterprise, what kind of words resonated with you? What did you hold on to? Or what do you tell your people when things are hard to focus on and to give them encouragement?
Well, I'll tell you what we've got painted on the side of one of our buildings. It's kind of the family creed. I didn't come up with it. I don't know whether my dad or granddad or great-granddad did, but what we say is we pray for plenty of good, hard work to do and the strength to do it.
That is so good and so true. And it's lasted your family then through some generations. And I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate your encouraging story. And I hope that with some of the new opportunities for education in your community, that people will hear your story again and again. And that it will be an encouragement to them to continue to do better with the community that they have and leave it better than the way they found it. Because that's so important for all of us, I think.
I appreciate you having me on today, Suzanne.
Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.